Hello, my name is Jack Barrich, and this is Ocean Solutions, a podcast produced by Altasea at the Port of Los Angeles. Altasea is developing the most innovative ocean research campus in the world, a place where scientists, educators, and business people can work together on solving some of the world's most pressing problems, including climate change, energy supply, and global food security. On today's show are brothers Scott and Brian Schmidt from the company Primary Ocean. The company, which they co-founded, cultivates seaweed products that can be used to face the mounting challenges of global food security. Scott and Brian are really fascinating guys with interesting ideas on how seaweed can not only be used to solve food security challenges, but can also contribute positively toward reducing negative environmental impacts. Hope you enjoy the show. Hey guys, by 2050, there are estimates that our planet's population will have grown to over 9 billion people, and the demand for food will be 60% greater. How do you see the seaweed products that your company, Primary Ocean, is creating will be part of the solution to meet the challenge of feeding the planet? There's a lot of people that are going to need to be fed, and we haven't quite figured that out yet.
Yeah, it's a complicated problem. We look at it as a whole systems problem. We don't really look at one individual issue and how do we solve that issue. We try to look at the total systems surrounding that issue. Mm-hmm. So when you look at a food shortage or a projected food shortage by 2050, we have to look at how we got there. And how we got there is through an intricate web, and that web is climate, food, water, energy. And most of these problems derive from climate-induced issues. So we have to look at, what are the solutions that can benefit from seaweed. It starts with cultivation. And as we can cultivate our seaweed, we're producing food in an environment where food is traditionally not produced.
Sure.
So as we're growing food in that area, we can offset the land that would typically be utilized for other food crops. So we're not actually taking away from land that needs to be utilized to produce more food.
Right.
On top of that, our seaweed grows up to 3 feet a day. It's a tremendous biomass potential.
Wow.
We don't need fertilizer. We don't need pesticides. We don't need fresh water, which again frees up those freshwater resources for terrestrial crops, which are gonna need tremendous resources from there. And also, we don't have the issues of any of the pollutants from the fertilizers and pesticides.
Right.
From a direct food standpoint, macroalgae is a tremendous food resource. It's got a great protein range and content, similar to soy. It's got tremendous macro and micronutrients, so it can offset a lot of the traditional diet that we're using in soy and corn.
How does it taste?
It's actually the best umami flavor of the natural food groups. So if you understand what umami tastes like, seaweed really embodies that flavor.
It's certainly an acquired taste. They've been eating it in Asia for centuries, but over here in America, we are a little bit behind.
Just getting kind of used to it.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting that you say it's an acquired taste, because I can remember being in college a million years ago when dinosaurs were still roaming the earth, and somebody's telling me, "Hey, we're going to sushi tonight," and at the time, which we now take for granted, it was this really exotic idea of eating raw fish. And honestly, I think most people will admit, at least my generation, that the first time they tried it, they didn't really like it so much, and it was an acquired taste. And you go from not liking it to becoming somewhere along the way a junkie. Like I eat a lot of sushi still to this day. So would you say that would be kind of like that as people get used to it and they learn how to cook with it and create different recipes, that it becomes something more that they can utilize?
Certainly that's what we're hoping for. That there's something that's going around called kelp is the new kale.
Right.
That's people been banging down doors yelling that for about 5-10 years now. And,
right.
The movement's happening. People are eating more of it.
So you have super kelp?
So yeah,
kelp is already super.
Yeah, awesome.
But no, I think Brian hit the nail on the head. First, it's trial, and then it's adoption. And in order to get trial, I think it's education. So we need to educate people what a great food resource this is,
sure,
and how healthy it is. And then people will try it. And as they try it, they'll learn to like it. I'm still working on the learning to like it part.
Right.
But my daughter, who is 19 months old, we introduced it to her early, and she can't get enough enough of it. I think it's her favorite food.
Yeah.
In fact, we have to start limiting it because that's all she wants to eat.
Right.
And I think that's what you see in Asia as people, they get the kids eating seaweed early, and they don't have to acquire a taste.
So you mean people
to.
should actually have their kids eating seaweed instead of going and having Big Macs?
Yeah, it's there's no Happy Meals yet in seaweed, but I think you're onto something.
Yeah, I think there should be, because Happy Meals are, well, I'm not going to say.
Jack, so you mentioned how our products help, to solve the food shortage in 2050. As we know, land agriculture is actually supposed to start depleting. We're at a nutrient collapse. Our terrestrial land has been overfarmed. What we're doing with our seaweed, we've created a processing method to where we take our seaweed and essentially we juice it, and we take the juice from that seaweed and we spray it onto giant fields. It is a organic seaweed fertilizer. It's high in phytohormones, and we can basically, the trials show a 30% increase in crop production, and we're eliminating pesticides, harmful fertilizers, nitrogen.
Wow.
I think that, thank you for bringing that up, Brian. That's a part of what I'm talking about, the whole systems thing, the whole systems approach.
Yeah.
Because seaweed, it's almost too good to be true. Mm-hmm. When you cultivate it, you're deacidifying the ocean, you're drawing down carbon, you're creating habitat where none existed before, you're growing an abundant food resource without all the things that we mentioned before, the water, pesticides, fertilizer. But then also, once we harvest and we process, we're creating an incredible agricultural product that then increases food on land. Some of our early trials with tomatoes, beans, are coming back showing that when treated with our seaweed biostimulant or organic fertilizer, we're seeing a 40% yield increase in the terrestrial crops. So not only are we growing food, but we also are creating a product that helps grow more food on land.
Right. So I was gonna ask this question later, but since we're talking about it, I'll jump to it right now. So who are then some of your customers for what you sell? It sounds like you've got farmers who already have land-based farms. You have people who are going to eat the seaweed, whether that be, through Whole Foods or... So how do you guys see this thing pushing out into the world? Who would be some of the people that you could see as your customers?
So our very first product is the organic biostimulant fertilizer. Right. So our very first clients and our current clients are farmers, industrial ag. Our first client is Colorado Cultivars, the largest hemp producer in the United States. And we're doing trials right now in the Central Valley with different fruit and vegetable crops. But that's where we intend to stand up our business, is in the organic agricultural input sector. Right. So we hope to sell to the industrial farmers in Central Valley, California first, and increase their productivity and decrease the need for additional synthetic fertilizers or pesticides.
Yeah, that's. I would have never guessed that was I would have just thought of it as a product that you eat, and which is good enough, right? But then the fact that you can do that, how is it going to be? And this is getting probably a little into the weeds, and I'm just curious. I go to the store and I pick up my apple and it says certified organic on it, so I buy that one instead of the one that is not. Is what you're doing going to be able to provide that sort of seal of approval of being organic? Your product will then allow them to be organic versus not organic?
That is certainly the wave that we are riding on, is the organic renaissance happening all around us. Farmers are starting to move that way. Just the population is creating more demand for organic products. And that's what we've identified as, a solution to hopefully creating a more, peaceful world, so to say.
Our product is USDA and OMRI certified organic input.
Awesome.
So when it is used on your crops, on your tomato fields, and those are sold into the marketplace, that's all still organic material.
That's awesome. Yeah, on a personal note, my wife, my son both have food allergies, so we're really cautious about what we eat. So stuff like this, provides hope, because it's very challenging as we have to feed more people and do it on a mass level. And then so that's, where these pesticides, maybe come in and provided a service, because they allow the yield of those crops to be larger. And if you guys can provide that same yield without having the negative byproducts of it, it seems like a win-win.
Absolutely. It's also about reducing the synthetic fertilizers. And the synthetic fertilizers, again, whole systems approach. That is what's polluting our rivers,
Right.
and that eventually pollute our bays and create the dead zones. And it's a circular, system that we believe we can actually cultivate our seaweed in these dead zones, uptake those nutrients that are pollutants to the oceans, and that's the nutrients as we grow the seaweed. Then we return those nutrients right back to the crops where a synthetic fertilizer was used before, and you no longer have to use the synthetic fertilizers.
Got it. You guys are partnered with Catalina Sea Ranch, which is their headquarters are located at Altasea, and they're the first company to have permits for in U.S. federal waters to do aqua farming. How do you guys work together? Like, what is the partnership? Because I know that one of the things that they farm are mussels. So how is it that you guys are involved with them?
So it began in 2017 when we made an equity investment in Catalina Sea Ranch, and at the same time acquired the macroalgae cultivation rights to their permit, which is a truly valuable, intangible value to that permit, because as you mentioned, it was the first and only offshore aquaculture permit in the United States, and the regulatory environment is extremely burdensome. It would have taken us years to get our own permit.
Right.
So they were cultivating mussels, but had the ability to cultivate seaweed, and they weren't cultivating seaweed, and we said we want to be the seaweed team.
Right.
So we acquired those rights. Then it turns out that our companies are truly symbiotic, as our crops are. As the companies are related, Catalina Sea Ranch has a bunch of tremendous assets: ocean vessels, laboratory space, offices, which are an incredible amount of capital required to get started.
Sure.
As a startup, we didn't want to have to go raise $3 million to buy the same boats that they have.
Right.
So we have a use and service agreement to use their assets to develop our site, thereby taking their underutilized assets and creating more value for them, and creating tremendous value for us because we don't have to go duplicate the model.
Right.
I said symbiotic about the companies, but I think you were touching on it a little bit. The crops are actually symbiotic as well.
Sure. That was my next
when
question.
cultivated in tandem, essentially the pollutants from the mussels, which are ammonias and nitrates, are actually the nutrients for the seaweed. And then the seaweed, as it starts to naturally biodegrade, it creates its food for the mussels.
Right.
And when cultivated together, the mussels actually grow 15% faster, and the macroalgae can grow up to 50% faster. So It's a truly symbiotic whole system called integrated multi-trophic aquaculture, or IMTA.
Wow. So, one of the things that we here at Altasea are trying to accomplish is turning to this ocean to create solutions for some of mankind's most pressing problems, including food security, which you guys are obviously in that space. Do when you go to ocean conferences, you hear a lot of doom and gloom, and some of it rightfully so, when you see the plastic that's going into the ocean and the other stuff that's happening. But do you see hope in the ability to create these solutions so that we can sort of get our act together and solve some of these problems that are facing us, in the 21st century?
If you don't have hope, what do you got? Doom? I don't want to live that way. No one should.
Yeah.
Yes, we see the issues, and it's rough on us sometimes because we're in the weeds. We're in the seaweeds. We see what's going on with the rising temperatures of the ocean. We're going to have to be battling that with the crop production even out in the ocean, because if the acidity is rising, then certain crops don't grow as well anymore.
Right.
So we have to selectively breed.
I'm going to interrupt you for a second, because that's something that I think is very interesting. I think a lot of people who are very big into ocean conservation, they don't often make the connect to private business, because private business, quite frankly, has often been the enemy of the ocean, right? So in this case, I always surmise that if people have an economic interest in the ocean being healthy, that the ocean there's now more of an incentive, a financial incentive, besides just doing the right thing, for that ocean to be kept cleaner and healthier. You guys have a financial incentive, and I'm not to take away from your character, I'm sure you guys would be for a clean ocean anyways. But once you add that economic component, not just to you, but to 1,000 businesses across the planet, that could be what helps get that ocean clean, because there's now people are earning more of a living from it. Would you agree with that?
We live in a capitalistic culture, and it's money that's going to drive intent and action. I'm going to step back real quick and talk about the hope that I have. The hope that I have stems from the response to this call to action.
Right.
We've been called to action from climate change, and there's been a tremendous response. Agencies and groups like Alta Sea, yourself, like Primary Ocean, ourselves. We've got a lot of impact-focused investors coming from all over the world, Silicon Valley, New York, France. I mean, you name it. So
Department of Energy.
Department of Energy. So you've seen a great response to this call of action. That's where I have hope, is that people are going for it. But in order to go for it, you can't just say, okay, we've got a problem and throw money at it, because money, if it's not returning money, is going to dry up.
Right.
So as an entrepreneur and a businessman, I have to look at, okay, how can we support this initiative long term? And it's got to be financially viable. You can't just have a money pit and always take donations and raise money on a nonprofit.
Right.
So that's the framework that we come from. That's right. That's the framework we come from. We're a commercial enterprise, and we have to prove that our enterprise can be viable. And once we prove that it's viable, then the impact money is going to come, and then we will continue to have a viable business, and that business just so happens to be so environmentally impactful. So our altruistic selves say, let's just do it for the betterment of the ocean. But the entrepreneurial side says, okay, how can we sustain this indefinitely? And you have to sustain that through profits.
Right.
So we want to be a very environmentally focused company, but the key word is company. You have to have a company in order to provide the benefits, or else it all goes away.
Right. Hey guys, awesome. Really interesting talking to you guys. Thank you for joining us, and look forward to seeing you next time.
Hey, thanks for having us. It's been great. Thanks, Jack.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Ocean Solutions, produced by Alta Sea at the Port of Los Angeles. To learn more about Alta Sea, please visit altasea.org.